right. It's Alexander Lawrence, The Portable Infinite. We're reading Ulysses today. Chapter 5, The Lotus Eaters. Yeah, I don't remember what I said about the previous chapter, but Ulysses is a book that everyone should read. I mean, if you want to read, and I am going to read all the great books from the 20th century. The Probably, yeah, maybe 10 books or so. We'll read them all. We'll start with this one. Uh, it's not really a difficult book if you just kind of like figure out what's going on. Lotus Eaters. It's a good chapter. It sets off a lot of things that go on later in the book. It's like a lot of so far we get Daedalus and Bloom kind of meandering, kind of like just like thinking in their minds, and this one, they're running. There's more characters that are becoming more important because like they're kind of they're getting out of the head and getting into the real world. So let me read the first page and just kind of talk about what happens in this, so you get like a sound of the book. By lorries along Sir John Rogerson's quay, Mr. Bloom walks soberly past Windmill Lane, leaks the linseed crusher, the postal telegraph office. Could have given that address too. And past the sailor's home, he turned from the morning noises of the quayside and walked through Lime Street. By Brady's cottages, a boy for the skins lolled his bucket of offal linked, smoking a chewed fag butt. A smaller girl with scars of eczema on her forehead eyed him, listlessly holding her battered cask hoop. Tell him if he smokes he won't grow, or let him. His life isn't such a bed of roses, waiting outside pubs to bring da home. Come home to Ma da, slack hour, won't be many there. He crossed Townsend Street, past the frowning face of Bethel, yes, house of Aleph Beth, and past Nichols the undertaker. At 11 it is, time enough. Dare say Corny Kelleher bagged the job for O'Neill singing with his eyes shut. Corny met her once in the park, in the dark. What a lark. Police tout. Her name and address she then told with my Tularoom tay. Oh, surely he bagged it. Bury him cheap in a what you may call with my Tularoom. In Westland Row, he halted before the window of the Belfast and the Oriental Tea Company and read the legends of lead papered packets. Choice blend, finest quality family tea, rather warm tea. Must get some from Tom Kiernan. Couldn't ask him at the funeral though. While his eyes still read blandly, he took off his hat, quietly inhaling his hair oil, and sent his right hand with slow graze over his brow and hair. Very warm morning. Under their drop lids, his eyes found the tiny bow of the leather headband inside his high grade just there. His right hand came down into the bowl of his hat. His fingers found quickly a card behind the headband and transferred it to the waistcoat pocket. So warm. His right hand once more slowly went over his brow and hair. Then he put on his hat again, relieved, and read again. Choice blend, made of the finest Ceylon brands. The Far East, lovely spot it must be. The garden of the world, big lazy leaves to float about on. Cactuses, flowery meads, snaky lianas, they call them. Wonder if it is like that, those Singalese lobbing about in the sun in dolce far niente, not doing a hand turn all day. Sleeps 6 months out of 12. Too hot to quarrel. Influence of the climate. Lethargy. Flowers of idleness. The air feeds most. Azotes. Hothouse in botanic gardens. Sensitive plants. Water lilies. Petal too tired to. Sleeping sickness in the air. Walk on rose leaves. Imagine trying to eat tripe and cow heel. Where was the chap I saw in that picture somewhere? Ah, yes, in the Dead Sea, floating on his back, reading a book with his parasol open. Couldn't sink if you tried, so thick with salt. Because the weight of the water now, weight of the body in water is equal to the weight of what? Or is it the volume is equal to the weight? It's a law, something like that. Advanced to high school, cracking his finger joints, teaching the college curriculum, cracking curriculum. What is the weight really when you say the weight? 32 feet per second per second. Law of falling bodies per second. They all fall to the ground. The earth, it is the force of gravity of the earth is the weight. Okay, so that's pretty good. That's the first page and a half of Lotus Eaters. James Joyce Ulysses is came out in 1922, so over 100 years ago. And he wrote this during the war. It's not a very political book, and I just might add, and there's a lot of it gets more involved there. He's kind of walking around. I mean, I'll kind of summarize the chapter a little bit. Okay, here we are. Let's see. So let's see, where were we going to start here? Okay, so Bloom's he's walking around on the and he's thinking about people he's passing, and he's ready. He's getting ready to attend the funeral that happens in the next chapter. He's reading packets of the tea company, and he takes out. So he later picks up a card for his student, and he's writing to some woman, and he's using the name Henry Flower, his alter ego, and so he's reading that letter. Like, I guess this is like kind of like people used to write pen pal letters, or like Ali would do Tinder these days, but people used to write letters, love letters to people you didn't know. So he's Henry Flower in this alternate life, and people used to pick up their letters at the post office. Makes sense. And then he runs into McCoy. Okay, so yeah, in this chapter, Bloom is sober. I think it's like in the first sentence, and pretty much everyone he runs into is drunk. So he runs into McCoy, and they're talking about talking about Patty Dignam, and let's see, and he's looking at the newspaper, and Bloom. McCoy's wife is also a singer, so they have that in common. So, aspiring singer, and but not that good, like not as good as Molly Bloom. And then Bloom sees an advertisement. Martha. I guess Martha Clifford's the person Henry Flower is writing to, and he's reading the letter now because McCoy kind of interrupted him, and then he tears up the envelope, and Bloom steps into the back door of a church, and he's like thinking about church or sitting down, and he's thinking about Martha and other things. Let's see, what else? Oh, and then he goes to a chemist, and he runs into Lyons, and was that who it is? Yeah, he runs into Bantam Lyons, and they're talking about the horse race, and he was going to throw it away. He mentions he was going to throw it away, and then Lyons thought he's talking about the horse. There was a horse called Throwaway that was in there. So he's Lyons wants to see the paper and bet on a race, and Bloom has no clue. So this comes up later when they meet later at the bar. Okay, so episode 5. It's up until now. I mean, these. I mean, we call this chapter Lotus Eaters, and we talked to the Calypso. But I mean, those, like I said before, those are only lightly applied. But here's it's more kind of the Lotus Eaters kind of describes the whole chapter, because like he's like like the Lotus Eaters are the people in the Odyssey. The Lotus Eaters are the people that kind of are complacent, and because they eat these flowers. And then in Ireland, in the Ulysses, the Lotus Eaters are the people who drink before funerals at 11 o'clock and stuff. So and probably maybe they don't even eat any food. Okay, so let's see. Let me see. Okay, so we see Major Tweedy's mentioned again. Martha Clifford. Let's see. The scenario of the Martha Bloom correspondence offers another motif related to the drug escapism of the Lotus Flower Eaters. The motif of flowers themselves. Bloom chooses the pseudonym Henry Flowers. It kind of synonym for Bloom. And Martha encloses a yellow flower. So there's kind of like this imagery of flower throughout this book. So let's see. Let me just kind of look and see if there's any. So yeah, okay. So he's talking to McCoy here, and we get Plumtree's potted meat. There's a lot of ads that kind of repeat. And Tularoom. I think we've said that before. And then you get, and then there's the letter. And this is a short chapter. I mean, it's only 10 or 15 pages too, and the cold smell of the sacred stone called him. So Lotus Eaters, and so let's see. Oh yeah, and then the throw it away. It comes like in the last part, and then he's talking about taking a bath maybe at the end of the chapter, and there's just, I mean, Joyce's kind of observation of characters in London, in Dublin, and then we get to chapter 6, and this book is kind of moving like at a rapid pace. We're already to the funeral. It seems like a lot of stuff have happened in their minds. We get a lot of detail, and Joyce wrote this whole thing from the continental Europe, and nothing, and it's pretty brilliant. It's like I said before, modernism is not. I mean, a straightforward novel would just have the characters like they're a young person and they grow up, like David Copperfield. Ulysses, because we got Ulysses because it's Joyce and it's modernism. There's a time's a factor. This takes place in one day. It's like everything, but one day, and all these references to like things that happen past and future, and just in the minds of the characters, and you get all that too. So it's there's a play with time. I mean, each chapter, I mean, they're supposed to take like maybe it's an hour. It starts at 8, 9, 10, and then 8, 9, 10 again, and then we get to the funeral at 10 o'clock. But time. When we get later to some of the longer chapters, it's like time. It's like this. well, there'll be like a different sense of time passing in those chapters and stuff, and that's Joyce, and that's like a modernist thing that you know nothing could happen, and in some books in the Beckett, and there's very little happening, but there's so much going on in the mind of the characters. So that's what's kind of interesting about Joyce and Lotus Eaters. Let me see where we're at here. Okay, so 15. It's not very. Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, I haven't done one of these for a while because I've been going to a lot of shows, and I've been reading other books to prepare for my interviews, and I have a book coming out pretty soon, like, and so yeah, I got a book of collected poetry, the analog body, and I'm also doing two chapbooks, the Deep Circuit and the New Spain, and they're all coming out in August 2024. So, but of course, I like to read Ulysses anytime. It's like I guess I started this on July 1st, and I'm not really. I mean, besides like some summary kind of material, I'm kind of like just kind of winging this. I'm reading from the chapter just to kind of give you a feeling of what it's about, and then I'm kind of like just kind of commenting on it, like as a a writer. I mean, I think people. I mean, sometimes they, it's like people looking at abstract expressionism, they look at that, they don't see that as painting, or the minimalism of 1970s. They just think, well, what is this? Because they're going with what they know, already. It's like, okay, well, what do you know? It's like, okay, well, before all abstract American experimental painting, there was a lot of representation and you know expressionism, and that's always pretty popular. But like this is where we in the 20th century is it's very experimental. Like Stravinsky was exploring with music with the Rite of Spring. Picasso was around at the same time, and doing all sorts of styles. Then and you can look in like a lot of the arts, like painting, poetry, dance, and there was a lot of rule breakers. There was a lot of rule breakers in the early 20th century, and I think that's really important to understand that people were trying to expand the art, trying to include a lot of other stuff that wasn't really in the novel. Because, like I said before, I think the typical 19th century novel had been perfected by Dickens, Dostoevsky, Tolstoy, and the French. Like I think Stendhal was like early 19th century, not 18th century. Like I was like thinking, but I read the Red and the Black so long ago, and maybe I didn't really know too much about novels at the time. But he seemed like a kind of like a French Dickens, or at least Tale of Two Cities Dickens. And we'll get to Dickens because Dickens gets parodied in this novel. So when we get to that one chapter where he goes through all the styles of all literature, and that's when Ulysses gets more experimental and like stuff, and and this is like 100 years ago. I mean, people were still reading real conventional novels at the time, and there wasn't like movies, video games, music coming from every speaker. There was no distraction, so there was like the free for a while. There was the freedom to let me hold on a bit. Oh yeah, I was just reminded because I did write a lot about this book, the Triquarterly, but this is about Finnegan's Wake. But this was about a lot of writers who were writing post Joyce, and I will I mean, I did spend when I was younger. I spent a lot of time like memorizing. There's two recordings of Joyce. One from reading a speech from Ulysses, and then he reads Anna Livia Plurabelle and stuff. And so like I was able to listen to that tape and pretty much memorize it when I was like 19 or 20. And so I'm gonna probably do a tape, see if I could still uh, if I still have it memorized. I have a lot of NFL Livia Plurabelle memorized. But and I'm going to talk about a lot of the writers that are kind of the post wake. I mean, maybe I'll do a little section about the writers in this book that are kind of post Joyce and how Joyce had an influence. I mean, not just on academics and not just Beckett and Flann O'Brien or Sorrentino and others, but a lot of writers, a lot of mainly French writers in the 50s and 60s. So we'll talk about that. Okay, so that's the Lotus Eaters, um, and I hope you enjoyed that chapter like I did, and we'll be back soon with the next chapter, Hades, or the funeral chapter. Okay, thanks for listening. We'll be back soon.